It is my honor to introduce our speaker for our next session, Dr. Jennifer Taylor. Dr. Taylor is the director of the Center for Firefighter Injury Research and Safety Trends, also known as FIRST, and the Arthur L. and Joanne B. Frank Professor of Environmental and Occupational Health. FIRST is a research, education, and practice enterprise at the Dornsife School of Public Health at Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, comprised of data scientists, epidemiologists, organizational scientists, and psychologists. FIRST supports first responders through objective data collection and analysis on safety culture, stress, mental health, and injury. Dr. Taylor received her PhD in health policy and management from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and holds the Certified Professional and Patient Safety Board certification. Dr. Taylor, or Jen, is both a country girl and a city kid, having a small farmette on rural Maryland's eastern shore and a townhouse close to the best cheesesteak place in Philadelphia. Jen is known for her military precision in packing people, dogs, and stuff into her F-150 for all-day beach excursions and is actively seeking therapy for what is becoming an unhealthy love affair with her tractor. So, great bio, and Dr. Taylor, welcome.
So everybody who's not here yet is going to wonder what we were all laughing about. So you can tell them later. Okay, so the problem is these things aren't designed for women, right? So, okay. Well, thank you very much. If I could give you data that could change the following things in your fire department, like increased safety compliance, increased job satisfaction, increased engagement with work, while decreasing your burnout and decreasing your injury rates, would y'all be interested? What if I told you I could tell you where the best cheesesteak was in Philadelphia? Would you be interested in that? A little bit more enthusiasm. Okay, well, let's see where you end up at the end. And if you're ever in Philly, now I just want to point out, I can't see, and I have a pointer, but the slide that's the cross section is the really important one. Because if you're from Philly, a cheesesteak is a point of argument, right? So the point about this one, I'm not telling you where it is because y'all have to come see me, but every piece of meat has a piece of cheese melded together in perfect harmony. And if your cheesesteak doesn't have that, you're going to have a really bad day. Okay, so that's what I want to tell you about cheesesteaks. I also want to tell you about some data. So Joss introduced the FIRST Center. And I know that throughout this conference, people have not been trying to kill you with PowerPoint and not be trying to kill you with data, but this is a different presentation because I'm going to slaughter you with both for your own benefit. The mission of the FIRST Center is to get the fire service to move from anecdote and storytelling to comfort and competence with objective data. That's our mission. That's what we exist to serve you. We exist to do research that you care about, and we are not afraid of data, and our job is to make you not afraid of data. And it's really important because if you don't have data, you're at a disadvantage. Those who hold the data hold the power. And data, I'm not just talking about numbers. That's an important part of data, but words are also very powerful data. When I go to city council and I tell them we need 5 more ambulances in the city of Philadelphia, I'm going to tell them the story about the medic who got his orbital bone broken by a crazy person. And then I'm going to show data that show the number of assaults medics have experienced in the city of Philadelphia. Words and numbers are how you move resources, right? So that's why data are very important to me. So this is your FIRST Center. This is our website. And today I'm going to be talking about one of our most mature programs, which focuses on your safety culture. I'm going to share all these slides with Michael, and so you'll be able to get the link for our website and go on and serve yourselves. So the focus part of our portfolio is about training the fire service to use safety climate data for objective decision making about the things you need to keep your membership safe, and also training you on data competence and comfort through our 2-day culture camps. Now, a lot of people ask me, since I am clearly not a firefighter, why do you do this work? And so a lot of people who do fire service research may come from firefighting families. And that's true. My dad was a volunteer. My uncle was a 40-year captain in Philly. Lots of men in my family are police officers and firefighters. But that's not why I do this work. I do this work because I'm a public health scientist. And that's different than a lot of other scientists you know, because scientists you know may do science on you. I do research with you. And as a public health scientist, I can only do research once a community comes to me and says, Jen, we need this. So in 2004, unlike any other industry I work with, the fire service said, we have a plan on a need for research. It was the National Life Safety Initiative. Are y'all familiar with the 16 initiatives? And this is number 1. Not that they're in any order, but this was the first one. Define and advocate the need for a cultural change within the fire service relating to safety, incorporating leadership, management, supervision, accountability, and personal responsibility. I do this work because you told me what you need. But you can't manage what you don't measure. So when Bruno was alive, for those of you who knew Alan Brunacini, he invited me to a meeting called the Baggers, which is definitely a bourbon conversation. But I got to sit in the room and listen to all these folks in the fire service talk about culture and safety culture, and nobody had the same definition of what it was. So that's where we started. And so having a definition, understanding what that is, and having data to measure it is critical. So I'm a data geek, and my job is to build tools for you that you ask for. So I built something called a safety climate tool for y'all. And so now you can measure what's going on in your fire departments. And safety culture is a great thing, but in order for me to study it, I would have to come to your fire department for about a year, which would be nice. I'm waiting for those invitations. This is my first time to Montana, so, you know, you'll get my contact information. But then there are 30,000 fire departments, so if I sat in your fire department looking at how you do things around safety, I'd know your fire department. So in order to serve the entire fire service, which is our goal, we develop a survey, which gives us a cross-sectional snapshot of your safety climate. And safety climate is very interesting because it is the workers, the rank and file's perceptions of management's commitment to safety and supervisor support for safety, as expressed through the existence of your policies, procedures, and practices, and what's rewarded and supported. So, Pete, wake up. Pete, give me an example of a safety policy in your department.
You need to have 2 people on an engine when it leaves the building.
Okay, so I'm a volunteer in your department, right? And tones go off, I'm the only one around, I drive to the scene, 1 person on the rig. So now that policy, and I might take that fire, right? I'm Jen Taylor, I can take that fire, right? But if I'm someone who comes up on your department and you say it's 2 people on a piece, but that doesn't happen, I will start to acclimatize to what I see, right? Seatbelts. Anybody have a seatbelt policy? Sarah, middle table, what is your seatbelt policy? Right. Tones go off, seatbelt on before you go out, right? So, but if I'm a new person in your department and I see company officers not saying anything to me, we're going off, we're putting on everything as we're going down the road, I see that the relative priority of safety to the other things, the competing demands we need to do, is to get there first, whether I get there in one piece or not, right? So new people, especially whether they're junior or whether they're transferring in, they go through this process of sense-making your fire department where they see what's rewarded and supported. What safety, do I wear my SCBA during overhaul, or do I come off the pack and blow snot out my nose like everybody else, right? That's how we get cancer, right? But what you do, the other ones are watching, right? So this is your safety climate, and we can measure these things and tell you what's going on in your department and how it affects things in the future. So this is a conceptual framework. And the most beautiful thing about initiative number 1 of the National Life Safety Initiatives is that there is a ton of science behind it. In over 200 industries around the world, we know that the safety climate of an organization is the strongest predictor of occupational injuries. No argument. Years and years of data. But it's a very upstream thought, right? Chiefs say to me all the time, Jen, or safety officers, I spent all this money on gear, I'm buying them all this shit, 2 sets, and they're still not doing it right. Changing your organizational culture around safety isn't something you have to put out money for. It's something you need to put out soul for. And so there was a talk earlier this week, it's not soft skills, it's human skills. Being able to communicate your priorities and that you care about safety. Having that filter down to your company officers so that the crews understand that that's what matters. If you care about your cancer, if you care about your heart disease, if you care about suicide, your organization needs to step up and think about the policies, procedures, and practices that are in place to make that happen. You can't buy your way out of safety. So, you told us what you needed, and in 2012, the FEMA AFG program, you're familiar with that? There's 2 sides of it. There's the fire prevention and safety side, there's the SAFER program, but there's this tiny little piece called R&D, research and development. So we got a grant to build you the FOCUS tool. And then once that was validated, we got a grant on the FP&S side with the Fire Department Safety Officers Association, FDSOA. Y'all familiar? No one? No one? Based in Michigan, so they do ISO training and health and safety training and all that kind of stuff. So we took the science to the streets with FDSOA, and we are now on our 3rd FEMA grant to take this to the country. And so even though I'm a Philly girl, FOCUS is national. The first center is national. We have assessed the safety culture in over 600 fire departments in the United States. And over 60,000 firefighters know what the safety culture is like in their fire departments. This is the largest sample of firefighters ever in the history of FEMA-funded work. We are in every state. Over 120 fire departments routinely reassess with FOCUS to see how they're doing based on changes they're making to their culture or things that are good about their culture that they're trying to maintain. So I want to take a moment to tell you how FOCUS was built, because anybody can create a survey. And the problem with anybody creating a survey is they'll come to you and say, hey, I got a survey, you take this survey. And you're like, oh, okay. But a survey has to be validated. We have to know that it's reliable and it measures what it's going to measure. Otherwise, if you take action on the basis of a survey that is not validated and you don't see any change, or you spend money on a set of PPE or some sort of intervention and you don't see change after measuring with an instrument that's unvalidated, it could just be the instrument, it might not be you. So don't waste your time. So if somebody asks you to participate in a survey and you ask the intelligent question, well, show me if it's validated, and they're like, what? You don't need to worry about that. You run like hell in the opposite direction, right? It's very, very important. Okay, so we had a winning formula. We took 8 geeks, 8 scientists like myself, and 123 firefighters, and we developed the FOCUS tool with you. Here's the geeks, scientists from all over the world, including Dov Zohar, who was the person who defined safety climate in 1980. So we had the dude from whom all safety climate science emanates in the world. He's at the Technion in Israel. And then we had 123 people from 12 fire departments in the United States. We went to the west, all the way from Snohomish, Washington. We went to the east. We went to the center of the country, and we went to 12 career, combination, and volunteer fire departments and interviewed and did focus groups with firefighters to hear what is up in your safety culture. And the reason that we really did this, now this is still data, right? These are words, right? This is what we call qualitative data. And the reason we did this is because when you take the focus survey, we want you to feel that it was written by a firefighter for a firefighter. And as someone who's not a firefighter, as a scientist, I need to spend time with you to make sure I get that language right. And that's what was done, and that's what was validated by the fire service and by our process. So, in the stories that you told us, we learned a ton. We learned, in this study down here, situational pressures, about why, in the moment of decision, you know you should wear SCBA during overhaul. You know that when you can't see particles, that's when the shit's going down, right? Right? You know that's when your risk for cancer is highest, right? Right? The particles you can't see are the ones that get deep, deep into lung tissue, right? But in the moment, when it's overhaul, people are coming off the pack. And we didn't understand why, because we can test them, they can show us that they should have the pack on. So we studied that decision making, and we learned a lot about how organizational solidarity, how the hero belief of firefighters can either positively or negatively influence pack wearing. So I tell you that because when I'm talking to you and interviewing you and I'm recording, that's data that I'm using to help explain the things that have really been sticky widgets for us in the fire service, like why don't people wear that SCBA in overhaul? And all of these papers, I'll show you in a little bit, are on our website. There's a publications tab. You can download every paper for free. You don't have to pay library fees or anything like that. You can use it for an IST, toolbox talk, whatever you want. Those are all there for you. We also learned when we were talking to you about your safety climate about the positive role women can play in the safety equation, because women happen to be socialized to look at risk very differently. And when they become trainers and leaders in a fire department, as difficult as that can be for them, it can actually change the equation. They can be a positive effect modifier in safety outcomes. So that paper is there, Ladders and Lifting, how gender affects safety behaviors. And then we also heard from you about the changing nature of work in the fire service and the collective grief around how the work has changed from less fire to more EMS, and how the bullshit runs of BLS calls wear you down, right? The traumatic calls wear you down, but the day-to-day, getting somebody in and out of bed, filling their scripts, taking them to the hospital for things that could be dealt with in another way, that's a cumulative exposure that impacts your mental health. And I'm going to be talking about mental health in the session after this, but I don't think anybody's going to be there because we're doing a live burn. So I don't know who came up with that schedule, but in any case. But so when you talk to us, we are able to create information about your stories and get people to pay attention to what you need. And this paper, A Strained 911 System and Threats to Public Health, talks about the research agenda for what is needed, especially on the EMS side of your work, which drives an amazing amount of the burnout in the fire service. Okay, that was the qualitative side, the story data, the language data. I mentioned validation, right? So stay with me for a moment. I'm an epidemiologist, so in order to make sure that this survey is representative of and generalizable to the United States Fire Service, I created what was called a geographically stratified random sample. Yeah, right? My mom's like, I have no idea what you do. So basically what it means is that I'm based on the East Coast, right? Fire service researchers have continuously been criticized for an East Coast focus. Okay? So the country is divided into 10 FEMA regions. From each of those 10 FEMA regions, I randomly selected 13 fire departments, about half career, half volunteer. They were career, combo, and volunteer, right? So, and Chief Waldo in Bozeman, and Tim in Havre. Anybody? Can't remember his last name. But we're two of the beta test sites. We had 132 fire departments that were random. We cold called them. Like, Josh did not know me at the time. Now he knows me. But we called these 132 fire departments. We got them to participate. We had 757 fire stations and 10,000 firefighters build this tool with us, right? We don't do research on you. We do research with you. So you were involved in every step of the way. And the really difficult thing about this is that the champion in each fire department had to get 60% of the total roster in each station to respond, because we needed to validate this data, and we needed very large numbers in order to do it. But we did it. The fire service did it. And so there can be no question about the validation of this tool. So we went through this really geeky process, and I show you this because this is what is necessary to get a validated survey, right? So that's why I have all these psychologists working with me and that kind of stuff. And so we have a survey that is valid and reliable. We have a paper that describes it. If y'all are having trouble sleeping tonight, I totally recommend downloading this one. It is a fantastic sleep aid. Right? But you've got to be able to put that out there so people can shoot holes in what you do, right? It's got to be peer reviewed, and we have to make sure it's valid and reliable. So that's what we've got. And so back to the advertisement. For every 10 points, you can increase your score on focus. That paper shows that you can increase your safety compliance by 3 to 5 points. You can increase your job satisfaction in your department 7 to 9 points. You can increase your engagement with work, feeling vigorous, dedicated, absorbed, by 2 to 4 points. You can decrease your burnout by 1 to 3 points, and you can decrease your injury rate by 7 to 9 points. This is exactly what those 200 studies in all industries have shown us, that safety climate is a robust predictor of injuries, but also the things that predict them, like being burnt out. If you are burnt out, you are more likely to be injured. If you are totally disengaged from the work, you are more likely to be injured. If you could give a shit about working here and it doesn't feel like a family to you, you are more likely to be injured. So this tool measures all those things. Now, it has 2 major components: management commitment and supervisor support. Management commitment to safety is about the white shirts. Is this thing on? Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for volunteering.
I knew I shouldn't have sat here.
Mm-hmm. There are 7 items in management commitment to safety. This is what people fill out. Go. Read it, please.
Leadership policies emphasize punishment rather than safety.
Leadership's policies emphasize punishment rather than safety.
We all heard him. Okay, go.
Decision makers in this department consider members the most important asset in our department.
Fantastic. Pass it on. Oops, sorry, hang on.
People who make policy decisions, SOPs, SOGs, in this department see eye to eye with rank and file on safety.
The decision makers in this department are out of touch with what we need to do our job safely.
Our apparatus is fixed and returned to service in a timely manner.
In our department, it's after an injury occurs that safety becomes prioritized.
In my opinion, when the budget is tight, our department cuts corners on safety.
Thank you very much. So what happens is people respond to this. It's 7 items. They respond on a score from strongly disagree to strongly agree. You get an aggregate score for management commitment to safety. Okay, supervisor support for safety is about those company officers, those lieutenants and captains. So let's see what that's made up of.
My direct supervisor puts a high emphasis on safety training.
Our house does a good job of carrying out its safety policies.
My direct supervisor takes my safety concerns seriously.
In our firehouse, we talk about safety on a consistent basis.
I have confidence in my command, my company level officers to keep me safe.
Our direct supervisor prioritizes rest and rehabilitation on scene.
On our crew, people expect one another to wear the PPE.
Thank you so much. So these are the 2 main predictors of occupational injury, burnout, morale, engagement with work in the fire service. This is an industry-specific safety climate tool built for you alone. Manufacturing has one, aviation has one, healthcare has one, now the fire service has one, and that's the focus tool. Now, this is about 520 fire departments who have taken focus. And these are those domains: management commitment to safety and supervisor support for safety. So on the left-hand side, we see management commitment, and the average is in the center. What's the average in the United States?
72.
What's the range? What's that low number and the high number?
44 to 93.
Yeah, so where do you want your fire department to be?
High side.
Right, so on a 100-point scale, there's a lot of variation in the fire service on management commitment to safety, and I got a lot to tell you about that. Okay, supervisor support. What's the average in the United States?
82.
And what's the range?
65 to 96.
Y'all are great readers. Thank you so much for having breakfast. So the interesting thing, so what do you see? Are you math dude?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I can do math.
All right. Tell me about management commitment versus supervisor support in the United States Fire Service.
It's less good.
Yeah, it's less good, right? There's a 10-point difference on average between management commitment to safety and supervisor support for safety in the United States. And that is consistent, right? Those supervisors are doing a good job. Management, there's room for improvement. Now again, there's a little bit of a locus of control thing here too, right? The closer you are to your company officers, the better perception you're going to have. You might not see people at headquarters ever, right? It might be a long time before a white shirt comes around, right? But this is very consistent, and the bigger your fire department becomes, the wider this spread is, with a couple exceptions, which I'll show you on the next slide. All right, so looking at organizational outcomes, things that predict injuries. What does job satisfaction look like in the United States? What's the average?
79.
And what's the range?
57 to 96.
Right. So a lot of variation in this. Feels like working here is like being part of a large family. I love my job. All these things that relate to morale. A lot of variation. Okay. And tell me about burnout. So these things are, all these positive things are on a 100-point scale, right? You want them to be high. But now we're going to talk about a negative outcome, burnout. What does burnout look like on average?
42.
Right. And then what's the range?
20 to 66.
Right. Okay. So that's actually pretty good, right? I mean, burnout is an 80, right? The range doesn't go all the way to 80. When it's 40 or less, we're feeling pretty good. But you can see that there are some departments that are at a 66. Yickety yikes, right? So that's a concern. The thing that I love as a geek about this survey is that it shows me that there's variation, which is what I would expect. And if I didn't see that, I'd be concerned about the integrity of my survey. Okay, how about engagement with work? Feeling absorbed, vigorous, dedicated. What does that look like on average in the United States Fire Service?
Average of 78.
And the range?
23 to 94.
Wow, what do you think about that range?
That's a pretty wide range.
You are awesome. This is why I love firefighters. They get physics, chemistry, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. This is a wide range of people feeling like when I'm at work, time flies, right? So these are all things that are modifiable in your environment. These are early predictors of what's going to happen on the line of duty injury or line of duty death front, okay? Now, can we get a little local? We can, because my dear friend Chief Waldo volunteered to do what a lot of fire departments won't, which is share the executive summary of his data. So this is Bozeman, Montana in 2018. And I want to show a couple things. We mentioned, right, our colleague over here, remember management commitment and supervisor support, how about a 10-point difference in the nation? Not in Bozeman. They're doing pretty good. When you get to an 80, you're in the maintenance zone, right? So in Bozeman, management commitment and supervisor support are very close together. That's unusual. But again, you've got a 3-station department, so maybe not so unusual, because maybe Josh is able to communicate. Maybe he's able to involve the rank and file in decision making. Maybe it's not as hard for him as a department with 20, 30, 60 fire stations. And I haven't met a fire department with more than 20 stations that doesn't have a huge difference, 30, 40-point difference between management commitment and supervisor support. Let's also look at this green box here, right? So what we've done with burnout and engagement is ask the same respondent, thinking about your work on a fire run, answer these questions, and thinking about your work on an EMS run. So the beauty of this is that the same person is asking the question, is answering the question, thinking about their work. So, sir, what is in Bozeman? What's the average burnout
For EMS?
for the department?
46.
Okay, what's it on EMS?
51.
And then on fire?
41.
Okay, so what do you think about that?
It's pretty close.
It's pretty close, but it's actually not so close. So it's over 40 on EMS, and there's a 10-point difference between fire and EMS in Bozeman on burnout. So this is actually something that Josh and I participated in the next research agenda for the fire service around the National Life Safety Initiatives. And this is when we started talking again, because he's really concerned about burnout on EMS. So can you stay with me on this? Look at the next box. Wow, I can't really, there we go, on engagement. So what story emerges for you here?
72.
Is the average, right? What is engagement on EMS in Bozeman?
65.
And on fire?
80.
15-point difference between engagement. This is the same person thinking about their work on a fire run and thinking about their work on an EMS run, right? So these things really matter because they affect what happens downstream, right? And with these data, when Josh looks at these data and sees differences between EMS and fire, it makes him think about what intervention can I launch, especially focused on the EMS work, that's going to help lift spirits, right? And so some of the things that we're talking about are interventions like shift rotation or station rotation, which I know gets your ire up a little bit. But it doesn't mean you lose your bid, it just means you get a little R&R, right? So if you're getting slammed at ones, maybe just go into threes for a rotation or so with your crew is going to give you a little bit of a break, right? So we go from something like that to something like Philly where they're doing 1,000 EMS runs a day, and it just never ends, right? So to send them to the suburban fringe of the city where they don't get as many EMS calls or they're not running as many calls a shift is definitely something that can be done if there's the will to do it, right? So this is organizational change and organizational culture. So it can be difficult from time to time. Okay. I'm trying to advance. Okay, so when you take the focus survey, a couple things happen. We give you back a 17-page report filled with data. Yum. And we do a 1-hour consultation with you through Zoom or conference call with your team, our team. We get a bunch of shrinks on the call. It's fantastic. And then we ask you for feedback about what do you need, what are you going to do next with these data. So I just want to share with you what some folks have said. Well, I'm not going to share with you. This gentleman's going to share with you. What do these data, having these data mean to your department? Oops, excuse me. There we go.
In my heart, I believe we promote a safe culture, but it was gratifying to see that others in our organization believe this to be true also. I like the fact that I can now put actual numbers to what has previously been a gut feeling from the fire chief.
Yep. So don't hog the mic, hand it to your guy.
Change is the hardest thing for people to accept. Trying to implement some change has to be well thought of, and with this kind of data, it helps. This is scientific data we could use to try to identify some of those pitfalls, and we could fix them. Salem, Oregon.
I'm looking forward to reassessing, and I'm hopeful that all the things we bragged about here are doing what we want them to do. It's a very useful tool to see where our people are, what their perceptions of our department are like, and what commitment to safety is.
Thank you. You get to be Bozeman.
I think it's important to figure out how to sustain this. Doing it once is good, doing it twice is better. But the true measure is when you continually reassess to make sure you're getting better and you're not backsliding, Bozeman.
Thank you. And so that's exactly what the tool is there to do, is to constantly be seeing something on which a fire department can rely to see what is our safety climate like today, and if we've made a change, what is the impact on our rank and file. Say you have a new chief, that's a great time to do a reassessment. Say you've had a focusing event, like a big fire or a line of duty death or a major retirement or a pandemic or something like that. These are great times to be reassessing. There are also interventions that we've developed at the First Center, like the safety leadership walk-around and the shift rotation intervention for burnout, that you can also try and then remeasure. So there are some best practices that we encourage you to think about when you adopt focus. If you have a local, I'm a union kid, so I have a bias for unions, just to put that right out there. My dad was a steam fitter with Local 420 in Philadelphia. It's really important to get labor at the table because data can be weaponized. So we have model letters of participation we give to fire departments and their unions to send out together to the rank and file so that everybody realizes that both organizations are on board. And so we use these data as a quality improvement process, not as punishment. Data can be weaponized and often are. These are for your internal purposes to help you with conversations with your city hall or your council, for whoever holds the purse strings, right? About the resources you need, or with community boards. So you don't want to weaponize against each other. And you also want to share it with the rank and file. You have asked them to fill out a survey, and sometimes fire departments don't share that back with the membership. And so they're like, why the hell should I take this survey again? Right? Because nothing happened. Right? So this is meant to empower you with data, but data should be transparent with your membership. This is your fire department. These are your data, and they are diagnostic about where things are and your way forward. Okay, so I just mentioned that we got our third grant with FDSOA to take this to the streets. One of the things that we're doing in this grant is we're doing a pilot with state workers' compensation bureaus in Washington State and Ohio State. Because in Washington State, fire departments that take focus are getting a reduction in their workers' compensation premium. So this, Michael will send these slides out to you, and this link is there if you want to get on a wait list. In December, I'm talking with the state fire chiefs and state volunteer firefighters here in Montana to think about how do we get this done for all fire departments in Montana who want it. Okay? So the other thing that happens once you do the assessment in your fire department, you get to come to culture camp. Culture camps happen all over the country. We've done 13 so far in diverse geographic regions of the United States. About 120 fire departments have participated in about 225 labor management partners. So we usually get someone like the safety officer and the union president or a trustee to come and do the training. And it's 2-day intensive trainings, and FDSOA teaches with us, and so there's a lot of bourbon, which is a very good lubricant for data. I see that nobody understands what I'm talking about, and I feel sad for y'all. So someone from Rich Marinucci, if you know him from Michigan, he is the FDSOA executive director, or one of his board members teaches with us. And we have these organizational scientists and occupational health psychologists who teach with us. And so in 2 days, we teach you all about what is known about safety climate. We get you competent with what it is, how to talk about it. And on day 2, you work through your data and you teach it back to everyone in the room. That's what this second picture is showing, is a fire department participant teaching back his data. And this is how we make sure that you're comfortable and competent with data. Sorry, I'm making a lot of noise here. Okay, so the teachbacks, right? So when you went to the academy, you learned how to use a Halligan, and you learned how to do Jaws of Life, and you may have like urban search and rescue, or diving, or other types of certifications. What kind of data did you get exposed to at the academy? For my chiefs and officers, what kind of data did you get as you promoted up? What kind of training on data? Right? This is a huge problem for me in the fire service, because you are at a huge disadvantage, especially as you promote up, for asking for what you need and understanding what the data show you. So this is our step out with you to try to help you have something. So the teach back feedback, Let me ask you, sir, to read this from one of our participants.
I enjoyed analyzing my own department's data and being given the opportunity to do a soft presentation to a group prior to doing one for my own department. This was extremely valuable so that I could fine-tune my words and have multiple sets of eyes see other parts of my data.
Great, you can pass it on to you right there.
I teach back. Greatly improved my understanding of the subject matter and helping guide my ideas on how I would deliver this information to my own members. Everyone had differing ideas and approaches and allowed me to adjust my delivery by adding and subtracting my ideas.
Thank you so much. So this was really important because you have us as the geeks there, but you have a room of 20 other firefighters who are walking down a similar road. So I can think back to a culture camp we had in Philadelphia where Honolulu was there from Hawaii and Philadelphia was there, and both of their union representatives were having the same issue with collective bargaining, and they sat down at one of the breaks and just went for it. Formed a really deep partnership, and were able to help each other over time. So when you're putting your data up there, you not only have the scientific experts on that data, but you have the fire service experts in the room who helped us build this thing in the first place. And you're all giving each other feedback. Well, what do you think about, that's not going to be able to happen in my fire department. We can't give our EMTs a food break or something like that. And then someone from San Diego will say, well, we do that, and da-da-da. And then people are like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can, right? So there's a lot of crosstalk that happens. Again, a lot of this happens over bourbon. Okay, you don't like bourbon, that's fine. Okay. All right, so did you read already? Yes, okay. Here, Pete. Okay, this is a reaction to the culture camp training from one of our participants.
This training takes you into the world of data and science. Learning to understand data and science allows departments to go deeper into the world of safety. In time, this will allow facts to be the rule in place of opinion or theory.
Oh, I like the way you read, Pete. Keep going.
This training validated much of what I already believed and could not prove, suspected, but had no way to verify, or plainly educated me on what I need to know to grow a culture of safety in my organization.
Thank you, sir.
It was fun to work with the Drexel team and have them explain the data and interpret it better. It helped me understand more about my organization and what I must do when I return home to prepare our people for the future of improving our safety culture. It showed me that the people are the ones that create the safety culture in any organization.
That's one of the best quotes I love, is that this person clearly understands that safety climate is about the people in the organizations and their perceptions. Perceptions are reality. If that's how they see management's commitment to safety or supervisor supports for safety, that's how it is. And that's the stories they will tell the others, which will either lead us to 200 years of history unimpeded by progress, or that's because that's the way we've always done it when the question why gets raised, right? So, again, we've got one more. Here you go.
I believe focus has the potential to have a positive long-term effect within our organization. I believe it will provide the guidance needed to help prevent injuries and improve the work environment.
Thank you so much. So, I'm a geek, and I'm funded by FEMA to do this for y'all. So one of the things I need to understand is it working? Right? And so I mentioned back when Bruno had me at the Baggers meeting in like 2010, every chief in the room had a different definition for safety climate and safety culture. So what we do in this training is we teach you about what safety climate is, and here's what happens. On day one at baseline, when you show up, we test your safety climate knowledge, expecting that you know nothing. And then at the end of day one, we test it again. And at the end of day two, we test it again. And here's my data, Jock. Okay, so tell me what happens between time one on the bottom and time two on the bottom in terms of an increase.
It got better.
Yeah, how much better?
A lot.
Right, okay, good. That's very quantitative of you. So we had a 55% increase on day one in the comprehension and ability to share the definition of safety climate. Okay, what happened on day two?
It got better.
It got better. How much better?
Some.
Ah, right, a marginal gain, right? But overall, right, so we had 55% increasing in understanding of safety climate on day one, an additional 20% increase on day two for an overall 75% increase from baseline to the end of the 2-day training. And since about 120 fire departments who have assessed with Focus have reassessed, and I have been invited to practice with them before they go before city council or a board of trustees or something like that, they still remember years later. And that's what I need to have in order to tell you that this training works. And that's why, you know, as a teacher, I'm very proud of that. Okay, so when we wrote the abstract for this and we were working with Michael about the abstract, she said, you know, make sure you help the group understand how the data are being used. So I would like to share 3 quotes from fire departments on how they've used focus data to get the things that they need. So the first one is from Prescott, Arizona, if you know Chief Dennis Light.
Coming on the heels of the greatest loss of wildland firefighters in recent history, Prescott has worked towards the necessary cultural change to minimize the chances of any future loss of life. Such loss presented an opportunity to capitalize on enhanced awareness for our members. Firefighter wellness has for many years been at the forefront of Prescott leadership and is considered to be fully inclusive of firefighter physical and mental well-being. The focus survey provided myself as the fire chief a very solid baseline from which to seek process or other incremental improvements in our employees' overall wellness. The added focus demonstrates a top-down, bottom-up approach towards doing the right things to shift a culture regardless of generational differences. We fully support the continuing efforts being undertaken and hope that funding will continue for the immediate and long-term future to benefit firefighters everywhere.
Yeah, I know, right? He can really talk. So can I ask you to share Chris Cavender, the Health and Safety Officer for Dekalb, Georgia, Dekalb County Fire, Georgia.
Our safety committee was tasked to research the clean cab concept and see if we would adopt the concept on our trucks. At the conclusion of our research and colorful debate, we reached an agreement that DCFR should move toward the clean cab concept to reduce exposures to cancer-causing carcinogens. But the decision to go clean cab ultimately lied with the Deputy Chief of Operations, who was still on the fence. I asked him to wait until I presented the focus survey to make the final decision on whether to go clean cab or not. He agreed to wait. Long story short, after the focus survey presentation, the entire executive staff was behind it and voted to go with the clean cab concept on the next 5 engine purchases. This was huge. As you know, firemen don't like change. I believe this was due to the fact that they understood the concepts behind the management commitment to safety. So DCFR is in the process of purchasing 5 engines with the clean cab concept. I want to thank you guys for what you're doing in the fire industry and encourage you to keep at it.
So what this quote doesn't say is that their management commitment to safety was in the toilet. And once management saw the data, they're like, oh shit. Right, so that's kind of how it went into COP. So if you can pass the mic to your colleague. This is the last story I want to share from Mike Stanley in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
I thought you might want some follow-up on how we have utilized the results of the focus survey to improve the Oshkosh Fire Department. We were recently awarded funding from the Oshkosh Area United Way to bring in a trainer from the Responder Strong organization to spend a day working with our peer support team, and then 3 days of training our entire staff on ways they can deal with stress, become more resilient, recognize risk factors, and several other mental health topics. We presented the results of our focus study to them, and the validity and data from the survey made a very compelling case that led to the funding. Additionally, we have requested 3 additional firefighters or firefighter full-time employees in 2021 to reduce overtime expenses. We utilized the focus survey to illustrate the fatigue and burnout that our personnel are experiencing. The request is having a favorable response from our city council. The local newspaper also references the study. Here's the link if you'd like to review it. Hopefully you feel, as I do, that this is a demonstration of a great work that your team is doing and how it can have a huge impact on an organization.
Thank you. So we continue to collect data on how fire departments are using focus for decision making. These are just a few examples. And the nice thing about the relationship we have with these fire departments is they're willing to talk to you, right? If you want to talk to these folks and say, how did you get that done? What would you recommend to me? They have really strong command of their data, and they're able to think with you about how to use it for your benefits. So as I mentioned before, the point of focus assessment does not change your safety climate. It measures where it's at. You have to do something. Sometimes natural things occur in your fire department, like a change, that warrants a reassessment. But my belief is that the fire service has the solutions for changing its culture, and that there are things that you can do. There are some things we know that work specifically in the fire service, like the informal after-action review. We know that that works. We know in healthcare that the executive walk-around also works to improve safety climate, and we've actually, with the fire service in an advanced culture camp, developed a safety leadership walk-around intervention. If your management commitment to safety scores in the toilet, this is for you. If your burnout score is what's concerning, like it was in Oshkosh, then the station rotation pilot is something that you should consider. So we have some things we're developing at the First Center, but one of the things that happens in the discussions when people are sharing their data in a teach back is that others will say, well, this is what you should be doing, right? So the solutions come from you as well. But it's meant to be used as a pre and post test to measure how you're doing. The one thing that I found very helpful in departments is when you are being told, whether you're under consent decree or other things, to be looking at your culture. If you're participating in focus, you can say, we've got this. I don't need you to hire a fancy consultant and pay them all this money. We've already got the First Center working on this for us, and that's come in handy in a couple departments. So the last thing that I wanted to point out is on our website, this is our publications tab, and these are all of the papers about focus. Again, if you're having trouble sleeping, I totally recommend the validation paper, but the other papers actually have the words of your brothers and sisters in them. So they're not dry scientific papers, they're actually your reflections on what your safety climate looks like and how we can move forward. So this is my contact information. Again, you don't have to write it down. Michael will send all of these slides to you. And I'd like to let you know, I'd like to answer any questions and just let you know that you can get on the wait list for focus assessment, and I'll be talking with your state chief and volunteer associations to see if we can shake down the state for some money for Montana fire departments who've not yet done the assessment to participate. So I'll back up for a moment and ask what questions that you have. Please, sir.
I like what you said, perception is reality. I certainly agree with you. The question that I have is, it seems like what you've done is you've quantified a lot of qualitative things, like how do you feel about safety, where do you feel, all these things that are really people's feelings, which I agree translate to reality. But what I didn't hear much was on the results side. Do you, in the final report, is there a space for, especially in years following, analyzing hard data, such as like number of sick days burned, on the days missed from injuries, et cetera? I mean, do those factor in somewhere?
Yeah, so the survey the only thing the survey captures in terms of hard outcomes is self-reported injury in the last 12 months, and did that require medical treatment, whether it's first aid treated on scene or transport. So if a fire department wants to share that data, light duty, lost time, first aid treated on scene, we can analyze that data with these data. So we don't collect it because a lot of fire departments, honestly, this is my early work funded by FEMA, don't have good data on anything, right? But what you have, we can certainly plug in. There may be other things unique to your fire department that you're doing where you have people participating in annual physicals and things like that. So whatever data you have, if we can make the connection with the survey and you're willing to share that with us, then we can do that analysis for you. So this is the beginning. This is your diagnostic where you can sit with it and meditate and say, wow, our company officers are doing a great job. I want to just share that. Or our managers, because what happened is during the pandemic, we did a national mental health assessment of the fire service due to the pandemic. And we included new scales about leadership commitment to safety and participation in decision making. And they both went, which you'll see in my next presentation if you stay, which I wouldn't do because I would go to the library. I mean, it's awesome. But so we're adding more into Focus. So Focus 3.0 has a lot more diagnostics that we learned from this kind of rapid assessment during COVID. So we're adding, Focus will continue to grow. And a lot of it is because when we do these culture camps, chiefs are like, well, we've got a suicide problem or we've got a this problem. What's on the survey that's going to help us with that? So it's meant to get you started and serve as a diagnostic. Anything else that you've got in your department, we can certainly work with you on that.
But just to be clear, but most of what you're measuring at this time are subjective things based on people's impressions.
But it's not subjective in that it's validated. So this is, so again, safety climate is a shared perception, right? It's not your opinion. And you've always got that guy. I call him Bob. You know, Bob's always complaining about everything. He's, you know, curmudgeon, da-da-da-da-da. It's not about Bob. It's not about whether Bob wears his has to be. It's about the culture in that crew that Bob is on, right? And does everybody feel like Bob, or is Bob really an outlier? Because safety climate is one of these things that becomes a group characteristic, right? And that's how organizations evolve or don't, right? That's the way we've always done it, Jen, so that's the way you're gonna do it. That's one culture. And the other is you've got these new people coming in asking why, and you're like, all right, let's answer that. And if we don't have a good reason, or that's the way we've always done it, maybe we need to think differently. So it is, this is the real feeling, and it connects very strongly to what's going to happen down the road, like injuries. Or the thing that we haven't been able to connect it to yet are exposures that lead to cancer, just because of the latency with cancer. But we're actually working with the International Public Safety Data Institute on the N4s system to see if we can actually model out those exposures. So it's going to get bigger and bigger. We just, as scientists, have to prove the connection to the final outcome. So injury we've proven, burnout we've proven, morale we've proven, engagement we've proven. The things that cause disease, more longer term diseases, are a little harder to do, but we're going to continue to work in that space. Please.
Can you focus on what step one is? What do we, if I leave here and I forget your name and I don't know the website, what do I go back to? What's step one?
Right, so my name is Jen.
I understand.
Just think cheesesteak, right? Y'all missed the beginning. Y'all missed the beginning.
If I Google Jen, I'm still not going to find
Right,
step
no,
one.
if you Google first and Drexel, you'll find me. And again, these slides will all be shared with you. So the first thing that we need to do in the honesty room is find funding, right? Because right now I have money from FEMA, but that is designated for Washington State and Ohio State because they partnered with us, right, to do this. And so that's why I'm going to be talking in December with the Montana state organizations about where can we shake down some money to have this be available to any fire department in Montana who wants it. So that's our journey, right? In the past, in the previous FEMA grants, I went to Billy Goldfeder in the secret list and said, y'all come. And anybody who wanted to could do the assessment, right? But now FEMA wants us to prove, to take it to the next level. And so they want us to really talk about how is Focus going to be sustainable. So this particular round of funding is focused on state workers' compensation bureaus and Department of Labor's to see if they can make this happen so we can have a 50-state solution, right? So the best thing to do is to really work with the state associations who presented this morning and say, I want this for my department, let's find the money to do it. We are also at the First Center setting up a fee-for-service mechanism. But if you're a volunteer department or a small department, you're not going to have budget for that. So we're working with donors to see how we can, you know, in the past we've done it for free, but FEMA doesn't fund things forever. And so we have to find a way to make it sustainable. And unfortunately, that might mean departments have to pay for it, which is not the answer I want, but I'm just being honest with you.
Let's say we're in the position of pay for it. What's step one?
Yeah, so step one is to contact us. and say, we want to do the assessment. Now, wanting to do it is one thing. Having the champions in the department to get this done, as Josh can tell you, it's a lift, even for a 3-station department, right? So, because you've got to get the majority of people in each station on all shifts to respond. Because if you get only 30%, the first 30% of people are either really pissed off or really happy. So it's totally biased. You need to get 60% of all people to respond so we can talk about what does the safety climate of your fire department look like.
What's the time commitment to each individual?
Yeah, so we think the best time frame is to have it open for a month in your department. And then we turn back the results to you within a month with the 17-page report. We do the 1-hour callback, and then you get on the list for culture camps. Again, which currently right now are all funding dependent, right? But I'm hoping that Montana will, it's the what is it? The mineral state? What is it? Treasure state. Treasure state. There's got to be some sapphire that can fund this, right? You're like, no way. Just, it was an idea. Yeah, but thank you for your question. So get in touch with us at the First Center. We've got a wait list right now. Again, we share that with FEMA, and we're like, look, there's all these people who want it. So we're also trying to get them to do like a cooperative agreement with us where we don't have to write a stupid grant to serve with what's already done. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Lots of things don't make sense to us.
Question here.
Yes, please.
It is a volunteer department that you have the questions that you asked in our survey. Obviously, you have those questions somewhere that we will be able to avoid that you've gone through the process of finding the right questions and that I can look at.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, if you want the survey, we can send it to you to take a look at. And again, volunteer departments were part of the development of the survey and our participants today. So it was tested for both volunteer, career, and combination departments.
So then when you're talking about interventions that are done like for burnout and stuff, you're talking about interventions for paid departments. You also have interventions for volunteer departments and things kind of in that toolbox?
Not yet. Okay. Yeah, but again, these interventions we developed them with the fire service. We actually haven't launched them yet. Okay. So again, fit testing them for a volunteer department is totally legit, right? Because they're based off of already existing science. So it may be a little different. We have to tweak it a little bit, but we'd have to tweak it even for career departments because you've got career departments with 10 stations, career departments with 60 stations. It works very differently in those spaces. But don't think that there's anything different about participating if you're a volunteer department. And actually, volunteer departments are very interesting because in most volunteer departments, and again, this probably makes sense to you, management commitment to safety and supervisor support for safety are really very much in lockstep. As you become combo or career, everything kind of shits the bed, pardon my French. The more career you become, the worse things look, and that's kind of what the data say. So volunteers, there's a lot we can learn from volunteers, especially on safety, since y'all are like flying for Delta and running manufacturing plants, kind of safety is in your DNA anyway. So it's really, and so when we built the safety leadership walk around for low management commitment scores, that were not just in career departments, volunteers were a part of that. And volunteer departments with great scores were a part of that to help us think about how do we help departments who don't have that luxury. Okay, we're 3 minutes over. At 10:30, I'm going to be talking about not just physical injuries, but mental injuries. But I know I'm competing with a live burn, so I totally understand if you don't join me for that, but I'd be happy to talk with you about that. Both slide sets will be shared with Michael, so if you have any questions about mental health assessment and what we're doing, I'd be happy to share that with you as well. So I really appreciate, thanks Josh for having me here, appreciate working with you, and it sucks that I didn't get to go fly fishing, so that's all your fault. So, but come see me in Philly and have a good cheesesteak, and look forward to working with y'all. Thank you very much.